You ready to get started? Okay. Hi, I'm Brianna. I'm an author with my debut novel, Robbie McNeil's Hit List, coming out in spring 2026 from Sourcebooks. This is Beau. He has yet to write a book. I make posts about publishing, querying, and writing. If you prefer written formats instead of video, you're in luck. Text versions of all my posts are available on my Substack, which I have linked below. All right, so let's start today with story time. I was 6 years old when I made my first spreadsheet. My best friend and I had an imaginary game where we pretended to be Fizzgigs from the Dark Crystal, and we had a whole bunch of imaginary characters in the story of our made-up game. So obviously, the logical thing for a 6-year-old to do was open Excel 95 and make a spreadsheet to keep track of the characters. As you can see, I was clearly a super cool kid, and we haven't even touched on the part of my childhood where I carried around a fanny pack full of floppy disks. In the ballpark of 30 years later, I still rely on spreadsheets to manage my imaginary stories. I recently showed a non-writer some of my spreadsheets, and they were surprised that writing isn't just, quote, hiding away in a cabin in the woods, scribbling in a notebook. So despite my deep abiding love for Excel, I am aware that spreadsheets in general aren't everyone's thing. Although wouldn't it be nice if they were? But for me, there's just something so satisfying about a good set of rows and columns. But even though not everything works for everyone, learning what other writers do has helped me develop so much as a writer, finding what does and doesn't work for me, thinking in ways that I wouldn't otherwise, and kind of piecing together my own process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the ways I use spreadsheets to support my writing, and maybe a tidbit will resonate with you and you'll add it to your own piecemeal process. So first up is outlining. The first spreadsheet I make for every book is my outline. My actual outlining process does start in a blank Word doc, but as kind of a thought dump, I'll do a more detailed post on my outlining process another day, but eventually that Word dump turns into a series of plot points, and we graduate to Excel and we start thinking in rows and columns. So the rows are one for each scene, or depending on the story structure, this is sometimes one row per chapter. And then the columns are a summary, so what happens in that scene or chapter, word count, status, so done, partial, not started, and then a notes column. And without showing the incredibly spoilery outlined spreadsheets for any of my actual books, here's an example of what that super simple sheet can look like. So when I start, only column 1 is filled out. The rest of the details get added in as I draft. Which brings me to draft progress. So I'm a speed drafter. On average, it takes me 3 to 4 weeks to complete an entire first draft of a novel. While this is in large part fueled by ADHD hyperfocus and an utter disregard for the entire notion of sleep, it's also very much supported by spreadsheets. The second spreadsheet I create for each book is one to keep track of my writing progress while I'm drafting. Very few things in life are as motivating for me as clean data and a good graph. So once I start drafting, I write every single day until the book is done, any number of words. The total word count line on the graph just needs to go up because otherwise it doesn't look as nice. When I'm done writing each day, I update this sheet. So the rows are my stats for each day. The columns include the date, the daily and cumulative word counts, the number of scenes or chapters that I've done, and because I'm a nerd, assorted stats like the percentile of where that day's word count falls compared to the rest of the days. But that part's not strictly necessary. Because I have a complete outline before I start, I also have some formulas that run stats for me, like the percent of the outline completed and a dynamic formula to estimate the date when I'll finish the draft. So on the side, I have a little dashboard for myself that looks like this. So next, I do character and story timelines. I like any and all references to time to be super accurate in my work. So, surprise, surprise, I have a spreadsheet for this, usually 2 spreadsheets. So to start, I like a personal timeline for the main character. This is both for accuracy when I'm writing, and also just helps me with character development and understanding their background. How old is she? What major events happened in her life? When did those happen? Depending on the story, I may also include personal timelines for other characters or important in-world events. The rows are each important life event. And the columns vary depending on the story, but at minimum, I include the date of the event, what happened, and the character's age at the time. I also like accurate in-world timing, so I make a second sheet for the events of the book. This is similar to the rows and columns layout I just described, but instead of the character's age, I sometimes do day of the week or number of days until or since a major plot event. For Robbie McNeil's Hit List, where there's a subplot of the characters staging a musical, I made their show's entire production calendar, so rehearsals, costume fittings, production team meetings, etc. For another work in progress, the entire thing takes place over the course of a single day, and I have that day spreadsheeted down to the minute. And yes, I absolutely timed how long certain things take, so those minutes are accurate. And then why stop there? There isn't a single book that I've written that has just those 3 spreadsheets. Each of my books has at least 5 to 7 spreadsheets. Some have even more. It can vary depending on the book and what info I want to keep track of. Some are critical, some are just for fun, for myself. To name a few others I have, for Robbie McNeil's Hit List, where there's lots of karaoke, background music, and show tunes, I have a spreadsheet of song references throughout the book, the chapters where each occurs, and notes for myself on song selection. In a similar vein, but different manuscript, I have every dessert and baked good referenced throughout the book, who makes it, chapter and scene where it's mentioned, and whether it's actually made or someone's doing imaginary stress baking in their head. I have logistical sheets, like one with a set of formulas to calculate how much money you could fit in a given space. So like a box of a certain size based on bill denomination and whether the bills are in rolls or stacks. I've got really complicated logistics in a sheet for one of my sci-fis that has to do with an important device losing functionality over the course of the story and the rate at which that occurs. And because I was a nerdy kid who grew into a nerdy adult, I have variations so I could see how it would affect the story depending on whether it was linear, exponential, or logarithmic decay. And then very critically, I maintain a master spreadsheet that tracks and compares stats across all my books, because who doesn't want a graph to compare how many M dashes there are in each of their manuscripts? I know you probably didn't wake up this morning expecting to watch a 10-minute love letter to spreadsheets, although I don't know your life, so maybe you did. But thanks for watching anyway. If you do use spreadsheets for your writing, tell me what you do. If you don't use them, do you want to give it a try? If you enjoyed this post, let me know. You can take your pick of liking, commenting, and or subscribing. You can also subscribe for the written versions of my posts over on my Substack, which is briannaheath.substack.com and is also linked below. Thanks. Your tongue's stuck. Do you need some help with that? No? Okay.